In the previous video, we set up like 90% or so of our character here. We got pretty much everything up and running and good to go. Now we just need to finish it up. So what I want to do is, by default, I like leaving this with nothing, so you can clear it. But for now, we're just going to leave it as is. But we're going to go to our character, go to the shooter pawn component, and under the linked anim layer class, we're going to select our third person template procedurals. So that is the linked anim layer that is used right here by default. Okay, next up, we want to actually start pretty much adjusting our idle animation here to be, you could say, more proper. So this is where having proper animations does come into play. But what we're going to do is we're going to select IK handgun. We're going to add a preview asset. And I'm just going to do the M4. Where's the receivers at? I have this one for socketing. That works as well. And I'm just going to position it in the right hand. And just get it, holy sensitivity. And just get it roughly close. I don't really care too much about where it's at. That's not too far off. A little bit of rotation. And I want it to point more so vertically just for where the point of impact is. And we'll adjust the left hand with the left hand IK. All right, so we're going to leave this here. So now that we've adjusted it, we're going to hit the key. That's going to add a keyframe for this animation. And now you should be able to see, this is what I was referring to in the first video about the assertions. And that's due to having it applied pretty much twice. But you can see now the hands are in a more appropriate position. So the left hand is where IK handgun is, and IK handgun is now in the correct position. So left hand IK is going to be wonky, or I keep calling it left hand IK. It's off hand IK, but you should know what I'm referring to, I hope. Until we add a firearm, in which case the left hand or the offhand IK component is going to take over. So we're off to a good start. Now that we have all that, I'm going to go ahead and clear. And that's the only reason I don't like doing that, but we know we're pretty much good to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to test it and add on begin play. I'm going to create a new custom event. Call this one, I guess, setup firearm. And here we want to do a has authority check because we only want this to run on the server. What we're going to do is we're going to do a spawn actor of the examples M4. Set the owner to self because we want the owner to be the pawn. And here we want to attach to the mesh component to socket IK handgun, and we want it to snap to target. All right, then last thing on the shooter pawn component, we want to do a set held actor, and we are done. Now, first thing we want to do on begin play is we want to call setup firearm. So we press play. And here we can see there's the M4, and the left hand is in a more appropriate position. However, the left hand pose is overtaking it, which is a pose that is for the UE5 mannequin, and you can see it is breaking the wrist. So that's going to be something we change when we start setting up our actual firearm. But for the most part, we now have it, pretty much set up. The reason for the moving around, that is due to the actual idle animation. So you can see here it moves around like so. So one way to resolve that is to either set up a control in the control rig to move IK handgun alongside hand R. That's probably your most ideal solution. The other one is do your animations properly. And the third option is clear out all the other frames of this track. So for example, at the very top here, we can remove frames from 0 to 40, pretty much just delete all the frames from, just so we only have one. So that way there's no idle animation at all. It's just a single frame, and then the procedurals take over for the actual idle. So those are some of your main options. But the one thing I do want to test is make sure everything is right, is aiming. So we're going to set a event for the right mouse button. We're going to grab our shooter pawn component. We're going to search for start aiming and stop aiming. So on press, we start aiming. On release, we stop. Hit play, and we aim. We have pretty much everything by default. We're going to have some, definitely some animation work to work on, because that is bad for the locomotion. We got to figure out what, whoa, that's cool, jitter. But we got to figure out why it's also having a lot of influence on the upper body. So I might have missed something when it came down to the blend masks, but for the most part, we are all set and good to go. So in the next video, we're going to start setting up our actual firearm class, again, just like we did the character from scratch. And that way we can kind of go through and move forward, fine tune, and just really show you the components, so to speak, because we're going to be working with and applying all the components, and that'll show you really just kind of how to do it throughout the remainder of the plugin, because that's the bulk of it. There is just learning how to work with the components, understanding what they do, and really just how to use them. Once you understand how to use them, you're pretty much golden. It's a very simple concept, kind of like I mentioned in the overview. You just add what you want, like what features you want, and you're pretty much good to go. So I will see you in the next video.